This is Breaking Down Security. I'm Brian Brake. Hello everybody, this is going to be part 2 of our interview with Michael Goff. Quite a little interesting interview. We're going to start out talking, asking questions about how to find malware, and Mr. Goff is going to answer questions specifically about that. Detecting artifacts with inside of malware. You're going to learn about the locations of Windows directories that will contain. And we're going to talk about the types of indicators you're going to find. You're going to find packing, or you're going to find where the hashes have been changed on something. And we're going to talk about tips for capturing malware, amongst other things. So last thing before we go, we're very pleased. This is a first for Breaking Down Security. We have a sponsor, and the sponsor is cybrary.it. And what they do is they offer free InfoSec training to anyone who wants it, and their idea is it's free training for everyone forever, in this case. So Breaking Down Security is a sponsor as well, in kind of in a roundabout way. We helped them on their campaign to get funded, and we actually sponsor their one of their classes. We also have a forum on there, an official forum. So if you want to go over there and talk with us on that, that's great. So, they're a great sponsor of us, and we're a great sponsor of them. We believe in their mission to try to give InfoSec training for everyone for free. And, they have all kinds of training on Metasploit. They're doing some on reverse engineering that's in flight right now. So in the next few months, you'll see some training on how to do reverse engineering of software and binaries. So that'll be great. Go over there, cybrary.it. And they're a paid sponsor of the Breaking Down Security podcast. If your company would like to sponsor a podcast, we wouldn't hate on it. Feel free to hit us up over at bds.podcast@gmail.com for sponsors. We have plenty of shows left in the year, so if you want to, if your company would like to sponsor us, please let us know. So we're going to get right back into it. Mr. Besher is going to ask a question about detecting malware artifacts.
Okay, about the finding unknown malware. They go into automated memory analysis. Now, step 1 through 4 is all automated. You mentioned the indicators of compromise. There's some programs that you run that automatically look for those, right? But you kind of do it manually, don't you?
Yeah, so I promote a thing called malware management. So we, obviously Break knows all about vulnerability management. So it's the same thing, right? I read reports from Microsoft or Cisco or Adobe. Adobe's and Oracle's are going to be probably weekly.
Daily,
and
hourly.
Daily, hourly. And I take that information and I look to see what the risk of my organization is to these alerts or reports that come out from them. I'm doing the same thing, and I promote people to do the same thing with malware. You unfortunately sent me the Duco link, so here I am trying to read this thing before we get started. But it is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I take information from those reports, and malwarearchaeology.com will have a very large list of these reports here in the near future as a part of the rollout, so people have a source to go read these things. You take these reports and you pull out of it indicators, let's just call them that. I call them artifacts. And you look to see, this particular campaign, which is brand new, is using this new cool technique, right? They're using virtual shadow files. They delete the file and they're actually executing their payload from the shadow file folder. And so now you go looking there, right? You go harvest that, or you see if it's on, or you disable it, or whatever you need to do. These reports help you discover where to look. And if you build a matrix and you say, okay, where did this stuff get dropped? You are going to find an incredible amount of this stuff starts in C:\users\username\username/app data, something. The majority start there. So if you know where you start looking there, tools like auto runs or just doing kind of what step one said, go parse that directory for all executables and DLLs and compare that to your SHA-1 deep recursive hash master file repository that you had, you can find malware pretty damn fast in user-based systems pretty quickly. Assuming, of course, they don't delete the stuff, and now you're dealing with stuff that's in memory only. But memory forensics is time-consuming. The amount of memory we have in systems is huge. Have you ever tried to get a 32 gigabyte memory load from another country over the WAN to your environment so you can analyze it? It's pretty difficult. Or load it in WinDebug to see if you can read the dang thing. It's pretty difficult. There are far quicker ways to achieve a lot of what they're trying to achieve outside of automated memory analysis. But, obviously Mandiant makes a good, Redline and whatnot, all the tools there, let you parse these big memory dumps for various things. And they have some really good features there, but it is pretty damn time consuming. And I think that's a very secondary thing to do once you kind of got your handle on things.
A lot of Mandiant tools on this poster.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Alyssa Torres is a memory analysis guru. If you've ever seen her present, I recommend. Her energy is phenomenal. She's quite sharp. She used to work at Mandiant, and so she's now a SANS instructor. She's one of the organizers of the SANS Deeper stuff. Probably be there next month here in Austin. Next month, July, and so yes, in that aspect, they're going to be very heavy at that because that's an area that's an art. There's a lot to learn there. A lot of people aren't very good at it, so it's a great opportunity for SANS to educate people. And she's one of the best.
Now on this number 5, evidence of persistence. Anything missing that you can tell in that list? Scheduled tasks, service replacement. Yada.
Well, yeah. So an interesting stealthy, there's actually several here of persistence, right? An interesting stealthy mechanism that I investigated here not too long ago was this particular infector that the malwareans were using has the ability of, and I would love to demonstrate this at some point, but has the ability of infecting virtually any executable on your box, kind of like old school malware used to do. And so what they did is they infected management system executables, and your antivirus, your configuration management, your SIM, potentially even your application, and they infect the executable, something you normally wouldn't look at. They don't make it not work. This thing's so damn good that all it's doing is putting a hook. Now, granted, it breaks the cert, it changes the hash, but how many of us actually do a full-blown hash comparison of everything? With all the versions of all the softwares, how many of us would really catch that our AV is off by a hash? Oh, it's probably been updated. We would really kind of overlook that, which is why I think they're focusing on it. This modified executable is reading a location in the registry. That registry contains an encrypted version, XOR or base64 or just pure encrypted version of their DLL malware. That booting process that loads your management software reads the registry, decrypts, writes it to disk. They've modified something in one of the other services. Now, they do have service creation here, but they don't have service modification here. So they've modified a service that points to a DLL. It's just not on the box when you look, because the only time it resides on the box is when the system's booting up and your management software reads it, decrypts it, writes it. This loop that occurs when Windows is starting the services, it finally finds the file, it loads it. Once it loads, the malware then deletes the payload off a disk and you're infected. That is one very clever way to persist. So volume shadow copies aren't on here. Extended attributes of files aren't on here. It's another thing we've seen showing up in some of these reports. So yeah, the registry I think is a great place to hide stuff in regards, and I'm not talking auto runs. I'm talking ways of getting things to read registry keys to load from changes. But again, I think they meant a sample here. I don't think this is an all-inclusive list.
Okay. What is packing?
When you pack a file, well, everybody's familiar with like WinZip, right? Archive files. Yeah. Same kind of concept. So a packing is the ability to shrink a file. It doesn't necessarily have to, I suppose, but a way to obfuscate what's in the executable. So for example, if I'm writing an executable And obviously, people can reverse those executables, right? Reverse engineering of executables to steal the idea of what they do. You would pack your file with some mechanism, whether it's UPK or any of the other packers, and I try to hide what the executable actually does. So if I string out a packed file with a strings utility, string space -n space 5, so ignore everything less than 5 characters, and I look for certain things, I won't see anything because the file's been packed. And think of it as kind of like, it's been zipped inside of the payload, and as the payload launches, it will unpack itself. Or the malware has the code to unpack a file that's sitting there arbitrary. It's not an executable, but one of the DLLs of the malware will read that file, unpack it, and so you're looking for indicators of packing. And there's some utilities out there that do that.
Could you you're mentioning indicators by event ID? What if you were looking for nefarious people doing things using programs like, I don't know, make cab extract or something like that, using the tools that are already on Windows to propagate malware?
Right.
Do you ever look for programs that you're like, why are they running make cab extract or some other odd looking exe? For the vast majority of people aren't going to be using those tools, right?
Correct. So that is called my suspicious commands query and alert for Windows. And it is a 4688, and it's a process create. So anytime you launch something in Windows, if you have to turn this on, and it is unfortunately not on by default. It is a very noisy log or event ID. It will be number 1 and 2. If you enable the Windows firewall, it'll be number 3 and 4. 4688 is a launch. 4689 is a terminate or start and stop. So it will become very quickly your noisiest item, and your Splunk license will be chewed up in no time. But its value is huge because it will tell you exactly that. So if you take all the admin utilities, NetSH, C-script, W-script, and again, malware management says read these reports like the Duco report, look at the tidbits that they have in there, and add those things to your suspicious commands. For example, PowerCat is in my suspicious commands. Netcat is in my. They're not built into Windows, but things that we know are fairly easy and fairly readily used that I have read or gleaned out of a modern malware report, or even some decent antivirus report that I will look for the execution of. And the key is the execution of this once or twice. Right? Let's say there's 25 commands. I'm looking for 25 commands. Malwareans won't execute a command once. They will execute command number 1, number 3, number 8, number 12, number 15, number 25, number 50. I have a slide that's actually captured of one of these scenarios where they're on box doing this thing, and it fills the page. Admins never act that way. They extract a cab, that's it. They launch PowerShell, they run a script, that's it. They net use to a box, they ping something, that's it. But they don't ping C-script, command shell, read the registry, change permissions. And if they do, it's your admin. You can go ask them, hey, by any chance was this you at this point in time? Yeah, no, definitely not me. And so, yes, from that perspective, it's very powerful to watch what it is executing on your box. And I would recommend to everybody to create a unique alert that looks for all the administrative utilities in Windows and alert you when they're executed, and pay attention when they're executed in volume. And you will see a pattern very quickly. When Betcher logs into the Exchange server, he's launching PowerShell, always calling these 3 PowerShell scripts, so I'm going to exclude that from my results. Now, Break logs into this box as Betcher, and he's the bad guy. He's going to load PowerShell, and he's going to execute his own script. He's going to do some net use. He's going to do some reconnaissance. He's going to do a user dump. He's going to do a group dump. He's going to do all kinds of things. That sticks out like a sore thumb when somebody's on box that's a bad guy.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So you keep talking about Splunk, and I know that the last time that we had you on, you touted the awesomeness that is the Splunk. Has that changed? Because from what I understand, the free version or the cheaper version of Splunk has kind of evaporated in many respects. Have you found that you still use Splunk, or is there a replacement for Splunk for people, let's say, who can't spend the Brazilian amounts of dollars needed to make Splunk useful?
Sure. Yeah, I love Splunk, and there's a couple of reasons. Comparing Splunk to the Elk Stack, right, the open source version of Elastic Cloud and all that.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know somebody who runs a managed services for logs. The reason this particular service exists is so he can guarantee that that data for those customers gets wiped when needed. He is dumping that for Splunk, and I can't sell. I don't work for Splunk. I don't get any credit for Splunk. They don't even give me a free copy for talking about Splunk. So I talk about it because there are some massive benefits. People complain about the cost, but I have to say, when you evaluate the cost of a logging solution, and in this case of this service provider, he spent more time keeping the Elk Stack running and from just basic management than he did actually utilizing it for what he was intended to, and that's the incident response, active defense. If I need a resource and I post a job offering for someone that knows Splunk, what are my odds of getting somebody who knows Splunk over somebody that knows Elk or somebody that knows ArcSight? Very high. How much do I have to pay that person? How fast can I train Betcher to start doing Splunk? I'm pretty sure I can make Betcher a Splunk foo in the better part of a week. And that means I can get an immediate return on my labor and my investment in Splunk, which makes the tool of much more value, less man resources in regards to run the thing from a security perspective. I'm not going to talk about any other aspects of it. And so from my perspective, it's really not that expensive. I would need 2 people to do what I do with Splunk with another solution. So what other solutions are there? Elk Stack, open source, yeah, go for it. By default, no alerting. The fact that Splunk alerts out of the box, you cannot do logging without alerting. If I do not get an alert on those suspicious commands that I told you about, then what good's my logs? Really? Am I going to have to go to a console, log in, and read this thing? No. I'm going to craft this thing so it's noiseless. This thing hasn't made noise in a week. I'm going to do some tests. I'm going to hack this box. It's going to light up like a Christmas tree, and I know my alert works, and that's a really powerful alert, and it's going to send me an email, and it's going to come to my phone. When that sucker goes off, I'm going to react. Built into the box. Simple. 1 minute to set up. So from that aspect, Splunk is way ahead of everybody else. The other thing that it's incredibly powerful for is exclusions. I've got all these apps and processes running, all these 4688s. How do I get rid of a bunch of them so I can focus at the ones that aren't necessarily obvious to me? Yeah, Google update. Yeah, Firefox update. Yeah, it's in the right place. Yeah, that's normal noise. How do I filter that out? Surprisingly, a lot of logging solutions struggle here. Sumo Logic is terrible at this. They have some bugs I've found. I've another time for another podcast. I have evaluated probably 5 cloud-based logging solutions. Some of them don't have alerting that's refined. When I get an alert from Splunk, it's just the columns I want, just the data I want, not the entire log tidbit. But if I was to tell people to go out for, Splunk Cloud, you were referring to Splunk Cloud, had a free version called Splunk Storm. They discontinued that April 1st. I promoted that heavily for people to get started and learn that. Splunk Cloud is too expensive for people that don't have a big budget. It's $1,000 a month roughly. But I would say, out of all the solutions I picked, if I'm going to send you down a path, use the NXLog client on your Windows and Linux and Mac systems, and use Loggly as your solution. I can very quickly get my logs into Loggly. I will be posting my NXLog configuration file for people to utilize. That's very unique to Windows. That gives you the ability to exclude certain event IDs if you want, and also certain pieces of an event ID. Meaning, I don't want to see certain things of 5156, the Windows firewall. I want to cut down on how much traffic is going to my log solution. Can I get rid of some of these messages? The answer is yes. You can do it in the config file. So NXLog with Loggly, $50 a month. And you can log a fairly small environment, a lab environment, a home environment, very effectively create nice columnar reports. Their alerting is good. It alerts, but it gives you the entire log chunk. So I would say if you want a good, robust, easy to use solution that doesn't cost you a pretty penny, definitely check out Loggly and give it a 30-day free trial. And I am personally using that now in lieu of Splunk Storm going away.
Oh, it would be nice if we could say, this podcast was brought to you by Loggly, but I guess we're not going to be able to do that. So.
I guess you just did, and I'll work on that one.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. So let me ask you a question. Do you ever have any malware that you found that use things like, I found this out a couple of weeks ago, called code caves. And what code caves are is when executables are compiled by your compiler, GCC or Visual Studio or whatever, there's padding left in the program at the endpoints, or they add padding to, I don't know. This is probably something Mr. Betcher could explain, but the way that some malware is using these caves now, there's spaces in the program that you can drop malware into that will execute when you execute the program, and it doesn't change the size of the file. It doesn't change the hash. It doesn't make any changes to the file.
Yeah, it will change the size of the hash. It is very difficult to keep a file of the same hash. That is a very difficult thing to do. If there is some really bad, remember, malwareans are humans, as is humans. A lot of the stuff that people look for, entropy is a great example. Relying on certificates as being a good indicator of a thing being good, bad, or indifferent. Windows is loaded. Probably 1/3 of the files in Windows are of expired certificates. So there are things that just aren't of a lot of value when you're looking for indicators. Entropy being another one. So what ends up happening is you get a coder writing a piece of code, and the malwareans will stumble across this particular executable where they've inserted a ton of comments or notes to themselves of features that maybe they want to add, and they reserve this space, right? And the malwareans can take advantage of that and replace and put their code. The thing I talked about that was modified, the management software, is an example of one of these. They've taken the executable, they've broken it apart, they've inserted their stuff, and the executable is running perfectly fine. Again, they don't want to be detected, so your malware has to be fairly robust, or should be fairly robust, and maybe they have a whole DevOps environment for it, who knows. And so they can take advantages of poor coding to insert, right? Basically if I replaced exactly the same amount of characters with my characters, I can keep the hash the same. Yeah, in theory, in research, for sure. In practicality, not so much. Will they stumble across it and probably utilize it? Probably. Will they custom craft a utility that they can later use? Sure. I can totally see them doing that. And so I've looked through executables, and I've seen big chunks of stuff that people have left there in plain text. Like, for example, you'll see whole sections of all the error codes. Well, they can utilize the place where that guy put in all the codes, the English error code stuff, and just say, well, I'm just going to jump over that. If it wants to grab that text and spit it to the screen, I'm going to insert my malware. But mostly when they do that, they're going to break a digital certificate. There is research that's shown, by the way, when you sign an executable, it's not the entire file, it's pieces of the file. And so there's sections in between the sections that could be utilized to actually keep the cert in place and execute malware. Very highly complicated, but in theory has been shown to occur. But complexity, again, breeds instability, so therefore it's not really desirable to the malware manufacturers. I think they want something more stable. So yes, these places exist. They can create them. They are generally going to break the hash when they do that. It will be a very rarity. I would say 0.5% going to be reserved for state government type, state sponsored type malware that's going to do that. It's not going to be in your typical kits and things like your encryptors and your ransomwares and stuff. It's going to be stuff the NSA does, or the Chinese government, or the Russian government, or or HDMore, right? These guys that know stuff upside downs and backwards. But it's time consuming. They're on a schedule. They got to make money. They're selling their wares. Yeah, they're gonna do as little work. They're just as lazy as we are. As little work as possible, biggest return on gain. So yes, I think I've seen some of that. I don't pay too much attention to it. I just think it's just not enough out there. But hey, send me your samples. I'll take a look at it.
If you can capture it, right?
If you can capture it. Oh, let's talk a little bit about capturing tricks. So one of the things I do to capture malware is if I suspect or I've confirmed a box is, I mean, this is a really stupid but a very effective way to do it, is malware. There is a solution that's sold. It's been around a long time. And don't want to call them out. It does have an effective use, but if you can execute a piece of malware within a few seconds and delete it, this solution will not detect it. So they're very good at knowing that. And that means you have a very short window to harvest anything. And if you're going to try to check everything Windows does and try to capture that and try to be quick at it, your solution is going to be pretty dog slow. So malwareans have realized I can I can put a dropper, infect, get it into memory, whatnot, and then it can phone home and pull down more stuff. Pretty common method of how malware works. When I determine that box does that, and I can cause that to reproduce, whether it's a fish and I'm executing malware, like in the PowerShell example we started out with, I just run a simple batch file that does a copy all. You can use RoboCopy to speed it up. That once you figure out the directory through process monitor on boot, for example, or because you use some other tool like Carbon Black or whatnot to discover that this launches this, that called that and deleted this, and you know the directories, you go and run a batch file that does nothing more than copy everything to a subdirectory you create. And so when you launch that malware, it's looping. Copy, 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 copy. And as that malware drops a file, you rip a copy into this secondary directory, a subdirectory, and now you have a copy of the malware. Highly effective, have worked in every case I've tried it. All you need to know is where that malware initially launched, and make sure it's that directory you're in, because you don't want to be copying cajillion files. Clean out your temp directory before you do it. Delete as many files as you can do it. Usually, percent 10%, which is your app data local temp directories where this will occur, and you just batch file loop, and copy everything that occurs there in the course of your lab environment, and you capture the malware. Really cool, simple trick once you discover malware, because you can learn so much more once you grab those files that are deleted. That's how I found. That's how I captured the command and the VBS and the PowerShell script of that WinWord PowerShell backdoor.
Talk about how stupid easy this should be for everyone. Malware management.
I heard an interesting discussion recently, and the comment was basically, we have a very known robust environment, right? We've been doing IT for a long time, but unfortunately it's run by a bunch of amateurs, because the people in IT today weren't the people in IT 20 years ago. And so we have a lot of new talent. I don't think there's been a very good job. I'm sorry, another bash on SANS, that these people can afford $4,500 for a week's worth of training for just one subject matter, and become the gurus to the level that they need. So, I think people like us in the podcast we're doing will help educate people to get them better, to get them started, to get them interested in blue teaming, and to realize this isn't as hard as it seems. It's just that you've never done it before. The collateral is out there to turn on logs and start collecting them. Here's a way to do Windows forensics with the SANS stuff and the conversation we're having. And if you read these malware reports and you listen to these tidbits and you read my blogs and other people's blogs and Harlan Carvey's logs and David Cohen's logs, yada, 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 all the people that are involved in what we do, you'll start learning some things, and you'll realize there's a pattern. And malware management says, read the reports, and it will tell you where to look for malware when you get it. And if you build a matrix and you put in this malware hit these directories from what they reported, right? There's stuff that obviously doesn't make the report, but it hit these directories. It's this file extension. It loaded a scheduled job, right? Let's pick on the SANS poster here, right? It did a scheduled job. It installed a new service, the Black POS stuff, for example. It ran these auto runs, or it modified the run key, the run once key. I can't tell you how many pieces of malware use that. That's just ridiculous not to be able to detect it. And suddenly you'll see a pattern. It's very rare that I add a new thing to my matrix that I go, I don't have an analysis that looks for that, and I don't have a Splunk query that looks for that. And so I take that gleaning piece of information and I update my defense with it. So if you practice malware management, this stuff really does become stupid easy. Now, you need some tools. You need a log solution. You got to turn stuff on. You got to get management to buy you something. And there's other ways to do that for future podcasts. And it's really powerful to have tools, configuration tools like things where you can ask a question of a system. Taniums, for example. BigFix, another one, for example. SSCM, a kludgy way to do it, but in theory, slowly you could do it through. There's a concept of a PowerShell. I could crawl my environment with PowerShell. Command scripts, PS exec. I mean, right? We can go into the manual ways, we can go into the automated. But you should have a tool if you're a large organization that you can ask a question. And I would say this is a requirement if you're looking for an endpoint solution. I want to ask that system a question. I may have to send it a script to run first, but the results of that run, I should be able to somehow harvest and look at and say, that system's run key, all my systems run key do not have anything new, right? And that's that information you glean out of malware management. In the case of right there, auto start registry keys, I'm going to regularly run auto start on all my systems. It's going to write a text file. I'm going to run this thing once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever you're comfortable doing. The file size should be pretty much identical unless something changes, and your query across your environment should look for that text file output. Did it change? No, move on to the next one. Did it change? No, move on to the next one. And crawl your 100 or 1,000 systems, and you'll run across one that changed. And guess what? You'll type out what's in that text file and you'll find something was added to the run key. Somebody installed a new NVIDIA thing. Okay. Is it really NVIDIA? Yeah, I can probably trust that. And you do your investigation and you move on. It's stupid easy if you practice and you start doing vulnerability management, but with malware. Everybody does. They may not patch very quickly, but everybody does a form of vulnerability management. And really, that's all you have to do with malware. Read all the reports, follow people who do this, and learn from it. And then it's just a matter of finding the tools that work for your environment and utilize what you have, whether you buy a Carbon Black type product or a CrowdStrike type product or whatever. Figure out how you can ask that system a question based on malware management. And I think it really is stupid easy. And you'll find that by reading the reports, you'll find that the amazing amount of malware, vast majority of it, infects the user directory, the run keys. It's just incredibly consistently the same.
So I really only have one other question. We really don't want to have to use your methods of finding malware. So is there a way to, other than having to buy the fancy boxes and the CrowdStrike and the Bit9 and the Carbon Blacks and those things, is there a way to actually do prevention prior to?
That's tough. Again, the U word, users. Unfortunately, whitelisting is, I highly recommend people who are smaller shops. This is I'm going to be doing a talk to a bunch of SMBs at Texas State here in a couple of weeks at a forum. And I would highly recommend smaller organizations. I've been contacted a couple of people. Matter of fact, Break, you set me up with one of them and I gave him this tip. And I've been playing with this pretty extensively. In a smaller environment, AppLocker, if you have Windows Ultimate or Enterprise, if you don't invest in it, that feature alone, whitelisting is pretty powerful for smaller organizations because the idea here is if you're looking at an endpoint, the challenge you will have isn't in finding the malware. It is filtering out what's normal noise. Windows in general is very noisy. Every time you launch a browser or Chrome, there's a cajillion things. You launch GoToMeeting, there's a cajillion things. You launch Skype, check for an update. Adobe, auto update, check for an update. NVIDIA, ATI video cards, check for an update. You've got all these executables that are executing at the user level. You have to filter that out. And no endpoint solution does a really good job of filtering the known good out, so you're looking at a smaller subset. Now, so how do I get rid of this stuff? Well, you can whitelist. AppLocker, Bit9, right, and others have the ability to say, these are the things I'm allowed to run, and that's it. And when you fail, I'm going to have to add it to the whitelist. Painful if you're bigger, yeah, but doable if you're small, especially with AppLocker. So, there's a good tip for prevention. Definitely use things like OpenDNS to filter your web traffic, or any kind of web proxy to try to filter down some of the noise. Get an attitude in regards to, try to convince your company to get an attitude against this entitlement of surfing the internet. It's not very practical. Some counties have sued their local government. Some county employees here in Texas have sued their local. They got their union together and sued their local government county entity because they feel the use of Facebook is an entitlement, freedom of speech. But the reality is, some of the stuff poses higher risks than others, and you really need to try to come up with a way to reduce that noise. Not a FireEye type box, but stop users going to subject matters with filters like OpenDNS, and don't just say, you can surf everywhere. Seriously consider blocking attachments, and say, here's a tip. If you want zip files to come in, okay, I need to get zip files. Okay, I need to get Word doc files. Fine. I'm blocking all zip files and all Word doc files. This is really a simple concept that Exchange can do, that any gateway can do, but nobody does it because this entitlement is put a code in front of your email payloads. I'm going to send you a zip file, but we don't accept zips unless it has the extension malware sucks _ in front of it. And then your filter passes it through. So if you can cut off attachments, so I don't get this Word doc with embedded VB script taking advantage of an ODake because I didn't patch, because the Word doc did not have the right prefix or suffix code that allows it through my gateway, oh my gosh, you would cut your malware by 80%. Same with URLs. Plain text emails. Don't allow URLs to be filtered through, and allow that GUI look where it looks like it's ADP, but it's really malware.com somewhere, and you're getting infected. Hard choices need to be made. Smaller companies definitely can do this. But for the most part, as long as we have the entitlement of email and open web surfing, because our cultures have done that, we're an open development, we need to see the internet, yada, yada, yada. You're going to continue to get compromised. As long as you're an administrator, you're going to increase your risk 80%. So cut that off. But I would say, use script block for Chrome, no script for Firefox, ad block, use, all those sorts of things, web trust. Educate your users on what Lenny Zeltser and others have said. Hey, educate your users just on payloads of email. Reward them, but they may light up your help desk tickets by reporting all the stuff. So you have to balance that out too. But prevention, sorry, users clicking stuff. So unless you really your company can really refine that and take it away and get to a whitelisting perspective, I don't see prevention really being a good mantra these days. I think you have to just become detective and say, my user is going to click on something, so I want my logs enabled. I want that Windows firewall logging working, so when that thing gets clicked on, I can see what IPs it went to. I can look them up and know that it's not Google or legitimate.com, and then take action and reimage them. Reimaging. Get really good at building PCs. I don't know that something happened on this box. Here's a new one. Take the old one, reimage it.
I'm awesome with that. I right-click, clone, done.
Right. Exactly. Well, our free ESXi isn't that simple. But yes, in the paid version, it really is. But yeah, prevention's difficult. It really, really is. You're taking the user experience away, and that is very non-palatable to a lot of organizations. So you do what you can, but I think while these improvements are being made, while we get better at the basics, while we get our patches deployed, while we take away administrative rights, while we get these, fancy bells and whistles and blinky light boxes installed, and while we install these endpoint agents and get them tweaked, and while we pay our managed service people to do stuff, monitoring is fairly straightforward. It's free configs. You don't got to buy really expensive tools to be pretty good at it. Okay, well, Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions for Mr. Goff? I mean, you probably see him every day for lunch and such, but I don't get to, so I'm out of questions. But if you still have some you'd like to talk about, that's fine.
Hey, all the cool InfoSec stuff's happening in Austin, man.
Oh,
why'd you leave?
Well, my wife has a decent job, and I can't complain about the job I'm at now.
But this is going to be published for public consumption, so therefore they can hear that you may or may not be unhappy with your current gig.
I love them, and they love me.
Do
So, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to contact you directly, Mr. Goff?
I am at Hacker Hurricane. You can find me at my website at malwarearchaeology.com. Learn how to spell archaeology. But if you search malware archaeology, you will find me. Malware and archaeology. SlideShare, you can get some prezos. Just go to SlideShare and search malware archaeology. I am pretty much all you'll find on the subject in Google and in SlideShare and at malwarearchaeology.com. And of course, if you want to follow me on Twitter, at HackerHurricane. In Texas, we have to protect not only from hackers, but also from hurricanes.
Exactly.
I got to explain how I got my stupid Twitter handle.
Yeah.
And don't worry, folks, we'll have more to come on malware and malware management.
Yeah, we'd love to have.
It's a big deal.
I do want to do a session with you guys when I finally digest all these cloud solutions and get it put out into some digestible format. And I think this is a great way to get people smaller, SMBs or enterprise labs, right? I don't necessarily want to send my lab crap to my Splunk environment because my stuff's so noisy. I don't want people complaining that I'm eating up licensing. So I may and plus I want it somewhat anonymous. So I may send it to a cloud logging solution, just so I'm very focused at what I see and I don't have other noise to deal with. But I do want to definitely have a chat on this cloud solutions and what's good and bad about some of them and where they should go and what you can do to help drive them there.
Awesome. Mr. Betcher, how do people get a hold of you?
On Twitter, I'm at BetcherPwned.
That's all you
about
have? That's it. Do you keep
well,
your MySpace updated or anything?
Yeah. Not on the Facebook. But I do get the bds.podcast@gmail.
Okay.
So,
wow, you have email. That's cool. That's good. What do you on Chat Roulette? You probably do Chat Roulette a lot, right?
Boo.
Yeah, I know that fell flat. So you can find the official Breaking Down Security Twitter handle is @BreakSec. You can find me at Brian Break. Our Facebook fan page is facebook.com/BreakingDownSec. We're on SoundCloud, YouTube, Tumblr, Blogspot. You can find us at breakingsecurity.blogspot.com. Our RSS feed is www.breakingsecurity.com/RSS. And we definitely want Mike back. We're gonna do some video, maybe maybe he can show us how he analyzes malware. He can show us some stuff that he's seen, maybe in a sanitized output, so he doesn't divulge anything about a client or anything. But it would be nice if maybe you could show us how you analyze malware, or show us Windows logging. Oh yeah, hey, there's something going off. Make cab is running. That would be cool too. So the next time we have you on, maybe we can do something like that.
A tech segment.
I don't call them tech segments. That's the other podcasts that call it that. We're just, hey, you want to see something? I
don't think it's a copyrighted name. And we have this concept called public domain when you publish something for public use. So it's geek segment, mal segment, malicious.
Hey,
segment?
do you want to see something cool? We'll just call it that.
You want to see something cool?
You want to see something cool?
Some tech.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody. This has been a great interview with Michael Goff. And if you find value in that, oh yeah, we're on Patreon too. So if you find value in this, and I know a lot of people are worried about malware and stuff, and this was something that they can definitely take back to work and use, feel free to pop us a few bucks over there on Patreon. The podcast will always be free, but if you find value, we'd like to if you find value, please give value. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.